Yanagi can only play on disorder teams. Huh? Yanagi can also work as a Hypercarry? Hello citizens, as our third S-Rank Anomaly unit, Yanagi feels like she has the highest skill ceiling. I tested Yanagi extensively the past few days, and I'm excited to share my findings. In this video, I will cover everything from her general gameplay and mechanics to her team comps and builds. As usual, footage in this video comes from the Creator Experience server, and there might be changes on the live version. First, a quick overview. Yanagi can freely switch between two stances, blue and yellow, as indicated by the color of her hair strap and the buff color up here. Each stance has its own set of attacks and buffs that activate when you swap to them. In combat, you'll be swapping often and almost exclusively using her N3 to N5, since only these attacks deal electric damage. Thankfully, a lot of her attacks turbo her directly into her N3, which is really nice. Some other things to note, both of her stances have similar damage and anomaly application. You can swap stances using her normal special anytime without using energy as long as you're not locked into an attack animation. Her N4 dashes her over to the opposite side, similar to Ellen, and I found it nice for evading attacks. Most of her attacks seem to have decent range and tracking as well. Her kit also has quite a few iframes, which is nice since she is more of an on-fielder. Yanagi also has two other unique mechanics. The first is that her core passive buffs the disorder damage multiplier by 250%. However, this is additive, not multiplicative, so when triggering disorder on Burnice's burn, for instance, the actual damage increase is only around 14%. Second, Yanagi's EX and ultimate can trigger a special disorder called polarity disorder. This deals 15% of the damage of a regular disorder, plus an additional amount scaling with her AP. Compared to our other anomaly units, Yanagi relies on AP much more, since this AP scaling portion accounts for around 60% of this overall disorder damage. Keep in mind, polarity disorder can only be triggered if the enemy currently has an anomaly, and it does not replace this anomaly with shock, like a normal disorder would. I tested Yanagi on a lot of teams, and the disorder teams are definitely the strongest, with Yanagi x Burnice at the top. In content where you don't need Caesar's shield for survivability, I actually found Lucy and Rena to work better as a support. Rena works well here even at M0. Despite this being the best team, however, its power level felt similar to that of the Burnice and Caesar teams with Jane and Piper. One advantage is that Yanagi doesn't need Caesar buffs to perform well, but the Burnice, Caesar, and Jane or Piper teams definitely felt easier to play. For Yanagi, you will need to actively manage her stances and the timing of her polarity disorders, and it doesn't necessarily translate to higher damage. This can be a plus or minus depending on your preferred playstyle. I also tried Yanagi paired with both Jane and Piper. Caesar proved to be the best support here for both teams, with the overall performance slightly below that of the Burnice x Yanagi. Interestingly, Piper felt almost just as strong here as Jane. Without Caesar, however, both teams felt noticeably worse, but still viable. I recommend Seth over Lucy for Jane teams, and Lucy over Seth for the Piper variation. Oh, I also tried out the triple anomaly all-star lineup of Yanagi, Burnice, and Jane Piper. While the damage output is definitely quite a bit worse than the teams with 2 anomaly plus 1 support, it can work, and it's fun swapping around between Yanagi and Jane and Piper while Burnice burns in the back. One non-conventional disorder team I tried was Yanagi, Burnice, and Qingyi. Since Yanagi can store up to 3 charges of her EX, you can play her as a burst DPS, similar to Zhuyan. You save up her charges, and after Qingyi stuns the boss, you apply burn with Burnice, and then trigger 3 back-to-back polarity disorders with her 3 EXs, along with 1 to 2 actual disorder procs. It can deal some pretty insane damage. I think this could be a strong team in the future if we get a better stunner and more burn and corruption anomaly units. Currently, Burnice will be the best in slot here, as triggering Disorder on Burn will do more damage than triggering Disorder on Assault. For those of you who don't have another Anomaly unit built, or don't want to play the dual Anomaly teams, Hypercarry Yanagi was also fun to play and surprisingly viable. To be clear, this isn't a crit build Yanagi. She uses the same Anomaly build here, but her rotation in this team is purely focused around maximizing her polarity disorder damage by setting up powerful shocks. Yanagi, Rina plus Caesar work the best. Without Caesar, the team heavily relies on having Rina, and Yanagi, Rina plus Seth will be your best combination. I also tried the dual Electric Anomaly Grace x Yanagi team, but honestly, if you really like Grace, pulling for Yanagi's W engine and putting it on Grace might be a better choice than pulling for Yanagi. The two don't really synergize on the team together, and I found the Yanagi Rina plus Seth to work better than Yanagi Rina plus Grace. For those of you pre-farming for Yanagi, you'll want to max both her core passive and her EX plus chain/ultimate. Leveling these increases the additional AP scaling on her polarity disorders, which is very important. For her drive discs, I found these to work best. Unlike Burnice and Jane, who benefits from both AP and attack percent, for Yanagi, you'll want to heavily prioritize AP. This is due to her AP scaling from her polarity disorder damage. In terms of her W engine, her signature is quite strong, as it buffs her anomaly buildup, and this 25% buff to disorders is a true multiplier. Unfortunately, it only applies to disorders triggered by the equipper. For the Grace mains, this W engine is a nice pickup, and will definitely make Grace a lot more viable in the current environment. Though if you don't like Grace that much, maybe it's time to upgrade to Yanagi. Here's a rough damage comparison of all the W engines. While her W engine is very solid, Fusion Compiler is a decent alternative, along with a Battle Pass weapon. I personally would recommend pulling for her Mindscapes more if you want to invest further. Here are Yanagi's Mindscape comparisons. The extra AP along with the iframes from her M1 can be quite nice, especially for those without Caesar. Her M2 lets her apply a lot of anomaly quickly and further increases her polarity disorder damage. Since her M4 applies a debuff on the enemy, I also factored in the team damage increase if we had one other anomaly unit. Lastly, her M6 is pretty insane, as it further increases her polarity disorder damage and decreases the energy cost. For those of you with Burnice and deciding between Burnice's W engine versus Yanagi's W engine, I recommend Yanagi's W engine over Burnice's, though I would say the difference is not very big. And for those of you deciding between Burnice or Yanagi as a character to pull, I feel like Yanagi is definitely more fun to play, as she is a more on-field character, and her stance swaps and polarity disorder adds a lot of extra dimensions and makes the combat more fun. However, Burnice is cuter, in my opinion, and she is also a bit more versatile. Overall, I don't think you can go wrong with either, so you can pick based on which one you like more. Oh, don't forget the drip marketing will release later this week for 1.4 characters. I know a lot of people were saving up for potential Miyabi, so maybe it's skip Burnice, skip Yanagi, and go all in for Miyabi. In summary, Yanagi is a versatile unit with a high skill ceiling. She is strong but not overpowered, and there's a lot of room for optimization. I recommend her to those who enjoy disorder teams and exploring different rotations and strategies. There is definitely a learning curve around timing her stance swaps and polarity disorders, and the damage can feel lacking given how much effort you're putting in. Personally, I found her incredibly fun and rewarding to play, and I believe she has the potential to be a core unit in most future disorder teams. I think that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I had more things I wanted to mention about how to optimize Yanagi's rotation and disorder damage, but I decided to keep this video concise. If I have time, I'll put together a separate video focusing on these topics. Let me know in the comments if you would be interested, or if you have any other questions. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and see you on stream or in my next video.